One sentence from Donald Trump sent a ripple through oil markets, foreign capitals, and war planners all in once. A deal with Iran is, in his words, largely negotiated, and the Strait of Hormuz could reopen soon. But the bigger story is that nobody is acting like this is finished yet. That matters because the Strait of Hormuz is one of the most important choke points on the planet, and when it closes, energy prices jump, shipping gets nervous, and the whole region starts sounding a lot closer to a wider war. At the same time, Washington had gunfire near the White House, and Southern California was dealing with a chemical tank emergency that forced tens of thousands of people out of their homes. So today's news is really about three things in once: a possible Iran breakthrough, a reminder that domestic security and industrial safety still matter at home, and a broader question of whether America keeps getting pulled into other people's conflicts. Trump said he spoke with leaders across the Middle East, including Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Pakistan, Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, and Bahrain, plus a separate call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. According to him, the deal is not just about stopping the fighting. He framed it as a memorandum of understanding pertaining to peace, and said the final details are still being worked out. That part is important because the headline sounds a lot more complete than the reality underneath it. There's a big difference between largely negotiated and actually signed, verified, and implemented. The AP and other straight news outlets are still making clear that the key issues remain unresolved, especially Iran's nuclear program, enriched uranium, and the timing of any concessions. And that's where you can see the media split pretty quickly. Some outlets with a very obvious activist lean are treating this like the deal is basically done already. Meanwhile, the more cautious reporting is saying the opposite. This is a fragile opening, there are still major gaps, and last-minute disputes could blow the whole thing up. Trump also said his call with Netanyahu went very well, which is worth noting because Netanyahu had been pressing for a harder line, and in some reports for more military pressure. That tension matters. If the White House is trying to step back from an open-ended regional war, it has to balance pressure from Israel, pressure from Gulf partners, and pressure from voters who are tired of paying the bill for conflicts that never seem to end. If you're getting value from this breakdown, hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next update as this story moves. Here's the part that really matters. Reports from regional mediators say the framework would include an official declaration ending the war, 2 months of negotiations on Iran's nuclear program, reopening the Strait of Hormuz, and an end to the US blockade of Iranian ports. That is a huge package. It's not just diplomacy, it's leverage, pressure, and economic relief all bundled together. Iran, according to the reporting, wants the end of the war first, and the nuclear talks afterward. Washington wants the nuclear issue tied directly to the deal. That sequencing fight is often where these things collapse. Iran has also been signaling that it wants broader issues addressed: frozen assets, sanctions relief, and some kind of compensation mechanism. In other words, Tehran is trying to turn battlefield pressure into bargaining power. That's not a crazy strategy if you're sitting across from a superpower that keeps shifting between threats and negotiations. Pakistan has emerged as a mediator, and that's one of the more interesting parts of the story. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said Pakistan wants to keep facilitating dialogue, and there's talk that Islamabad could host future talks. Turkey, Egypt, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE are all playing supporting roles, or at least trying to keep the door open. The regional logic is simple. Nobody nearby wants a major war that shuts shipping, raises oil prices, and forces every government to choose sides. That's true whether you're in the Gulf, in Europe, or in the United States. Cheap energy and open trade are not small things. They're the backbone of economic stability. Still, the sticking points are real. Trump's side says Iran can never have a nuclear weapon and cannot keep its enriched uranium. Iran says it has the right to peaceful nuclear energy and wants recognition of that right. One side wants simultaneous concessions, the other wants a staged process. That's a recipe for either a breakthrough or another very public collapse. The Strait of Hormuz isn't just a line on a map. It's one of the world's critical energy arteries. When it's threatened, the ripple effects go way beyond the Gulf. Shipping insurance gets more expensive, oil and gas prices react fast, supply chains get jumpy, and ordinary Americans feel it at the pump, and in the price of everything that moves by fuel. That's why this story has a distinctly America First angle. Even if the official language is all diplomacy and memoranda, the US should care about keeping global shipping open, but that does not mean signing up for another endless regional West. Protect the lane, keep commerce moving, and avoid getting dragged into someone else's forever war. At the same time, there's no denying that this region is already unstable. There are reports of ongoing violence in Lebanon, Gaza, and the West Bank, and the narrative around those conflicts is all over the place depending on which outlet you read. Some of the more ideologically driven reporting leans hard into one side's framing, while other coverage is more restrained and keeps the focus on verified facts. The truth is probably messier than either camp wants to admit. What does seem clear is that escalation in one place keeps feeding tension everywhere else. A deal on Iran could lower the temperature. Failure could do the opposite very quickly. And that matters because Trump has been sending mixed signals. One day he's posting about peace and negotiations. The next day he's warning that he's ready to go back to strikes. That kind of ambiguity can be useful in negotiations, but it can also spook allies, markets, and adversaries all at once. Away from the Middle East, there was a very different kind of crisis in Washington. A man approached a Secret Service checkpoint near the White House, pulled a weapon from a bag, and opened fire. Secret Service agents shot him, and he later died at the hospital. A bystander was also wounded. Trump was inside the White House at the time, and was not hurt. That incident is a reminder that the security environment in the US is getting more chaotic, not less. Whatever your politics are, nobody should be comfortable with the number of threats and shooting incidents that keep turning up around federal institutions. The federal government can spend billions abroad, but it still has to keep the home front secure. Then there's Southern California. In Garden Grove, a storage tank holding methyl methacrylate overheated at an aerospace plastics facility and began venting vapors. About 40,000 people were ordered to evacuate as officials tried to keep the tank from cracking or exploding. Governor Gavin Newsom declared a state of emergency to unlock more resources and shelter options. This one hits a nerve for a different reason. It's not a geopolitical headline, it's a practical one. Industrial sites can become community disasters in a hurry, and when they do, people need fast alerts, clear communication, and competent emergency response. Residents described frantic evacuations, missing belongings, and uncertainty about where they'd sleep. That's the kind of disruption most people never think about until it lands on their block. And in a country as wealthy as this one, the standard should be simple: safer infrastructure, better preparedness, and less bureaucratic fog when things go wrong. Put it all together, and today's news has a common thread. Pressure is everywhere. Trump is trying to claim momentum on Iran while still keeping military leverage on the table. Regional governments are trying to avoid a disaster that would hammer trade and energy. U.S. officials are juggling diplomacy, security, and domestic emergencies, and the media is split between careful reporting and outlets that seem more interested in pushing a narrative than checking whether the deal actually exists. That doesn't mean a breakthrough is impossible. It just means nobody should confuse a social media post with a signed agreement. If this ends with a real ceasefire, open shipping lanes, and a verified path away from nuclear escalation, that would be a win. If it ends with more threats, more bombings, and more uncertainty, then the only people who pay are civilians, traders, and taxpayers. So the key points are these. Trump says a deal with Iran is largely negotiated, but the major details are still unsettled. The Strait of Hormuz is the centerpiece because reopening it would calm energy markets and reduce the risk of a bigger conflict. Regional mediators like Pakistan, Qatar, and others are trying to keep talks alive, while the US and Iran remain divided on timing, uranium, sanctions, and assets. And at home, the White House shooting and the Garden Grove chemical emergency are reminders that domestic security and basic competence still matter just as much as foreign policy. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think this Iran deal is genuinely close, or is this just another round of brinkmanship? Drop your take in the comments. If you want more clear breakdowns of the day's biggest stories, like the video, subscribe, and I'll keep cutting through the noise for you.